Hey guys, John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to do a comparison of my 3 Mesa Boogie Rectifier tube amp heads. If you know me, you know that I'm a huge Rectifier fan, so I'm very excited about this. This is going to be fun. So the amps that we have over here are this dual rectifier. This is an early 2000s 3-channel dual rectifier, the older non-multi-watt version. Then we've got my recently acquired single rectifier 50 solo head, which is awesome. This is the older Series 1 version, by the way. I recently did a full in-depth demo and review about this amplifier on the channel. I recommend that you check it out up here or down here if you're interested, by the way. And finally, we've got the mini rectifier 25 over here, this cute little lunchbox sized rectifier. And all of these amplifiers do sound different, so that's pretty interesting. So aside from the different power tubes that they have and the different power tube configurations, the actual amplifiers are also voiced in their own unique ways. So they definitely have their own sounds going on. They all sound like a rectifier, yes, but they definitely don't sound the same. So the dual rectifier over here is a 100 watt amplifier and it has 4 6L6 tubes in the power section, as well as 2 rectifier tubes, but I'm not using them. And this one obviously has 3 channels. So in terms of voicing options, it is the most versatile amplifier of the bunch and also the loudest amplifier of the bunch, of course, with its 100 watts. And for this comparison, I've got the power settings set to diode rectification and to bold. The single rectifier is a 50 watt amplifier and it has 2 6L6 tubes in the power section. And just as the mini, this one only has diode rectification. The single has 2 channels with 2 modes each, so it's a little bit less versatile than the dual rectifier in terms of voicing options. The mini rectifier is a 25 watt amp with 2 EL84s in the power section, so this one is the only amp with different power tubes than the other 2. And those smaller power tubes are basically there for the lower wattage as well as for the smaller size of the amplifier itself. And this one also has 2 channels with 2 voicing options each. And this is a multi-watt amplifier, so you can also scale the power down to 10 watts per channel. In this comparison, we're going to focus on the clean channels, so the green channels on the clean modes. And we're also going to check out the vintage modes on the red channels, and of course the modern modes on the red channels. And for all the clips, the signal chain will be as follows. The guitars are going into the amplifiers, and the amps will be fed into my RedSeven Amplification Amp Central reactive load as per usual, an awesome sounding reactive load, and then into one single OwnHammer IR from the 412 RECT Essentials package, the high gain mic mix to be precise. So that's one single cap tone for all the comparisons in this video. Let's start with some clean tones on the green clean channels on the clean modes using my Yamaha Revstar standard on the neck pickup. Let's see what happens when we put these 3 amplifiers side by side. Check it out. right, very nice. Now with the clean tones, they don't sound very different from one another, but the single rectifier, for example, does have the biggest low end out of all of them. The dual was very balanced sounding overall, with a nice treble and just an overall nice frequency range. And the mini had a little bit more mids going on, so almost a little bit more Vox-like, so to speak. But yeah, all the clean tones were pretty nice and not too different from one another, but they do have their own unique thing going on. And I expect that that will be more exaggerated with the distorted tones. And now let's move on to the red channels for more distorted tones, which is what we've all been waiting for, right? At first, we're going to compare the vintage modes on the red channels using my Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s on the bridge pickup, which is a Seymour Duncan JB, that classic pickup. And it's going to be interesting and fun to hear how these amplifiers differ with distorted tones. Let's check it out. Cool, very interesting. So with the distorted tones, the differences definitely become more apparent. The dual rectifier has that typical and very pronounced rectifier sound going on, so it's a bit more loose, more compressed, a bit more fuzzy, and I love that sound a lot actually. I just love that over-the-top rectifier sound a lot basically. It can be a little bit harder to play, it's less tight obviously, but yeah, to me that's like the most typical rectifier tone that you can get. The single rectifier definitely sounds awesome here. It sounds a bit more scooped and more metal with a more tight low end and more sort of crunchy mids. Definitely more scooped and chunky, so that's really cool. Great for metal. So this amplifier sounds quite unique and I love it. In comparison, the mini rectifier has a less massive low end and it's a bit more mid-focused overall, so in the bunch it's definitely the most vintage sounding for the vintage mode. It's a cool sound though and it fits the mix really well in my opinion. So yeah, pretty big differences with these distorted tones. Now let's get really heavy with the modern modes, and this is my favorite mode of the rectifier sound basically, so this is going to be fun. I'm going to use my ESP LTD NW44 Neil Westphal model with a bare knuckle aftermath pickup in the bridge position. Let's get started right away and enjoy. Check it out. Awesome. So again, the dual rectifier definitely is more loose, fuzzy, and compressed sounding. So yeah, loose and sizzly, just how I love the rectifiers. Typical recto, and it really does that thing, if you know what I mean. And again, I really like it for that over-the-top and typical rectifier sound. If you're into really modern and tight sounding chugs, then this dual rectifier might not be the rectifier for you. In fact, I think the single rectifier, again, is much more tight, focused, and metal sounding. It's basically more mean sounding and a bit more transparent in terms of the mid-range presence and cut. The tone and response definitely is very different than the dual rectifier. So again, more tight, focused, and mean. Almost as if there's like a boost pedal up front already in comparison to the dual. So yeah, I really like this amplifier as well. And as I said, I expect a lot of metal players to prefer this amplifier in this comparison, but we will see. And the low end is actually pretty huge too. So for a lower wattage amplifier with its 50 watts, it still sounds absolutely huge. And it does have the most in-your-face tone, I think, because of the more tight and direct tone. The Mini is awesome sounding here too, and it also definitely has its own unique voice going on. In terms of response, it does sit somewhere in between these two amplifiers, I think. Now, it doesn't have the most massive low end in comparison to the other two, but because of that, it does sit in the mix very well, and it does have that typical rectifier quality going on. The mid-range is a little bit different, a bit more full perhaps, and that can also work really well in a mix because guitars obviously are mid-range instruments. But yeah, it does have that typical recto fuzziness going on that the dual rectifier also kind of has, if you know what I mean. So yeah, even though that this one is a bit smaller sounding, I do think that it still works really well in the mix. Not bad for such a tiny amplifier. So that was my comparison of these three rectifiers. To be honest, I love them all. I mean, I'm a rectifier fan and I love all the different tonal options that they have to offer. And they definitely each do their own thing, which is cool. The dual rectifier is the most versatile in terms of all the voicing options and the power amp voicing options as well. And it does that typical and over-the-top recto thing really well with that loose low end, that compression, and that fuzzy and fizzy top end. But it does sound really huge and massive because of that. The single sounds more metal, tight, and mean basically. It's a really cool amplifier indeed. So yeah, I also really like this one, and it's a very different experience in terms of tone and feel. Very cool. The Mini does have its own sound, but it still sounds like a rectifier to me. And as I said before, the low end on this amplifier might be a bit smaller and more tight, especially when you're playing by yourself, but in a full mix that tends to work really well anyway. So for a tiny lunchbox amplifier, it does do that rectifier sound very well in its own way. Now, of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below because I'd love to know which of these amplifiers do you prefer and why. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you found it useful. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and a subscribe down below as that really helps the channel out and it allows me to create more content for you guys. So thanks for that. And you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you guys so much and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.